So you're standing in the pit for all these years, either London or Chicago, and the pit goes away. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, I think you would have to have been kind of ignorant to not see it happening. I mean, there's a lot of people that put their head in the sand, and I actually did a lot about embracing the change at the time. I said, you know what I'm going to do? It was like back when we were in high school. If you would have spent just as much time studying as you did trying to cheat, you probably would have had a much easier life. And so when it came time to seeing what was happening in front of me, I saw that this was going to be going away. Now, I got lucky when I started in 1988 in Chicago. I went to London in 89, 90, and then London went electronic in 97. I went upstairs and I made a successful transition as a broker. So we had a big business. I was with a bank. But when I came back to the States in 2001, it was still open outcry. It was like going back to high school. And I loved it. So I had another, swing at bat. And, but I also knew what was coming because I saw it happen in London. So I got, I had a little bit of a heads up. So I embraced the change. I started to really do more and more media because I thought that was going to be my future, and it ultimately ended up being that way. I never ever said no to an interview when it came to, Russia TV or Saudi Arabian TV. I always said yes. And I never ever missed, and slowly but surely, I got better and better and better at it, and I could tell that maybe I had a chance at doing it. Now, to make that transition, you have to be pushed. It's really hard to jump off on your own, and so my push was 2015, 2016, when the pits went all electronic. I actually got posted back to London for 4 years. So from 2015 to 2019, I went back to London, and I still enjoyed being a broker upstairs. I had a couple of big customers. But even that business was starting to slow down. And so I knew that I had to do something. And I came back in 2020. And over that pandemic, I got lucky and I got offered this job down in Nashville. But I'll rewind to tell you that it was a very difficult time. I mean, I really had to look deep in myself because when the pits went away in 2015, maybe that coincided with me getting divorced, my daughter dying, and my dad dying. So even my sister, when she tells me the story, it's hard to believe she's talking about me. But I lost the person that I adored the most in my life, the person that I admired most in my life. I got divorced after 25 years, and then I lost not my career, not my job. I lost that the pit trading was gone, and I was ill-equipped to do anything else. You're unique because you know what I'm talking about, but it's not like those skills were transferable. A lot of guys tried to go in insurance sales, or they went into retirement planning, all that stuff because they felt as though they knew a little bit about the markets. But truth be told, my industry was just gone. It was taken off the earth. And I had to do something, or I knew I was going to be in dire straits. When I came back from London, I was already looking, and I got lucky and got offered a job in the media, but it took me 4.5 years to finally make that big time switch. I still was doing some business as far as being an off the floor broker in London, enough to pay my way and enjoy myself over there. But when I came back, because my brother, I forgot to add, my brother died in the meantime too. So my daughter, my dad, my brother, I got a divorce, and then all of a sudden my whole entire 25-year career is reduced to nothing because it's just gone. Man, I tell you, you lay awake at night, thinking about what am I going to do to put food on the table? And it was always going to be, I was going to try to do media because I started to get pretty good at it. And it's such a cutthroat business because everybody's trying to do whatever, every business is cutthroat. It's no different than any other, I'm sure, but I got lucky, and I got pushed, and I took a job down here in Nashville for 25% what I was making in Chicago in the pits, or being a broker upstairs in London, or in London in the pits. But I knew I was going to have to start somewhere, and there was no such thing as nobody made a lateral move from what they were making in the pits to some sort of new career. So I had to start over. And I came here in 2021. I took a job on their main desk here, just being a regular news anchor for 6 months. But I did it under the guise that he said he would give me my own show. And in January of 2021, I got my own show. And no, January 2022. Sorry, I got my own show. And it's been fantastic ever since. It's been a big, big learning curve, but I'm slowly but surely climbing back to where I was when I was in London or in Chicago. But you have to 100% reinvent yourself, and you can't look back because, you know, when I was one time I was trying to tell my daughter about this. We were flying back to London for we had to go back to somebody's party or something, and my wife was there already, and I was flying back alone with my daughter, and I think she was probably about 12 or 13 years old at the time. And we were talking about this kind of the same thing. What did you do when the thing that you did for 25 years is all gone? And I said, I embraced the change. I went towards the electronics. I went towards um, what what uh, what the world was going to look like. I thought, and at the same time, tried to do this uh, the media thing and try to be on television and have my own show because I didn't know where I was going to land. Because I said, people that didn't embrace the change, they spent a lot of wasted time and money resisting it, and in the end, they lost anyway. And so now they didn't have any money and they didn't have a future. And I'm not kidding you. We were in the line to get in a black cab at Heathrow Airport to take us into London where we were going to be staying. And the guy that picked me up in a London black cab was the guy that used to trade in the footsie pit on the floor of the LIFFE Exchange. And he recognized me when I got in. And when we finally got to where we were going in London, I said to my daughter at the time, I said, that's an example of somebody that didn't embrace the change. Now, don't get me wrong, London cab drivers, black cab drivers do very, very well. They, those black cab cars that they drive. But still, it was nowhere near what he was, making when he was on the floor. And he was against the change, didn't like electronic trading and wanted everything to be open outcry. And that was an absolute perfect lesson right there when I got in that cab and he recognized me. And it's happened probably 3 or 4 times since when I'm in London. Not as much here in Chicago or New York, but there's people that really didn't, they resisted the change, wanted it to stay like it was. And don't get me wrong, and I think you would probably agree, we all wished it was like it used to be. But it's not the way the world works. So you have to make a change. And I got really lucky, but at the same time, I was planning on it to some degree. I was always planning on making a move to media since 2002. It just didn't really come to fruition until it really started to ramp up around 2015, 2016. And then it still took me another 4 years to finally land a full-time gig in media talking about the markets because I really wanted, you can be anybody you want on TV, I suppose. But I looked at a lot of other people on that were talking about the markets. Like what I try to, I try to emulate the people that I try to emulate. I want to be genuine. Obviously, I think I know a lot about the markets, at least more than the average person. So people may or may watch me on TV. But I just really want to be genuine and not fake. And I see a lot of these people when I watch these shows, and I can tell that they're not. It's not. They're not genuine. And I really wanted to emulate myself after. I don't have a grasp of the English language like, a grammar professor at Harvard. But I do have a grasp of markets and money. And I was a professor of finance at DePaul University. And so I want to kind of be like, John Madden was to football. I'd like to be that guy for finance. He wasn't very well spoken, but he was all emotional and it was all him. And I think that there's a spot for that and I'm trying to fill it. You know, he knew obviously he knew the subject matter very, very well, but he connected with the people. And I'm trying to do that with my show. So it's been one heck of a ride and I don't regret any of it. It's been very difficult at times, but it's also, I get to go up and speak in front of 500 people tomorrow at Purdue University. I get to fly all over the country to speak to people about what this market is and what it might do for them and actually maybe even help them along the way. And at the same time, the markets and finance has taken me to almost all of the Far East, all of Europe, a little bit of North Africa, and some of South America. I mean, I can't complain. It's just been, like I tell you, even though it's been tough, and even though I'm not the guy you want to go, send out to buy your lottery ticket because I've had a lot of tragedy. It's still been a blessed life. It's still been amazing, and I still enjoy it every single day. I can't believe that I get up and get to do this every single day. So it was a very difficult transition. I'm not the bravest person in the world. I needed to be pushed. I finally got that push when I was in London coming back the second time here, and somebody at RFD TV in Nashville offered me a job, and I took it even though it was not enough money. But at the same time, I knew that I could turn it into something. So here we are, and it hasn't been easy, but anything worth doing is not going to be easy.
The pits die 2015-ish, a lot of guys in your position. What did you see? I mean, obviously you were preparing, you embraced the change. Obviously, that was also a time of great tragedy in your life. So you got all five of those things kind of coming down. But extrapolate a little bit. The people that did well transitioning when their industry just died to something else, what did they say? What did they have? What could you learn from the ones that did it right?
I think that the people that succeeded, their expectations were different because if they were good traders in the pit and they were genuinely, and what I mean by that is genuinely good traders, they didn't stand next to a buy broker and they didn't stand next to a sell broker, right? Some people had the benefit of real estate in those pits, and so they automatically got fed. You know what it was like? It was almost like those spots were gold. They made money every single day. But there are some people that genuinely had to do the work. They had to call the market tops. They had to call the market bottoms. They had to call the swing trades. They literally became students of it all. And I got to tell you, more women did that than men because they couldn't compete with the physicalness of the trade, right? So they matriculated down to a part of the pit that wasn't very masculine. There wasn't a lot of pushing and shoving, and they had to choose their spots and they had to think a lot more about each trade than the guys on the top step that were just eating everything. Those people, I feel like, even if they stayed in trading, they might have done well when it was, electronic. But those people, I think, did a better job transitioning into something else than the guy that just sat up there and took all the sells from one broker and got all the buys from another broker. I think that those people ultimately had a different level of expectation, and they did that a different skill set where they weren't relying on where they stood. They were relying on their own moxie, their own decision-making process. And I saw that happen a lot. Guys would get, there was a lot of guys in booths that were never in the pits, Jim, that got made redundant when the floor went away, right? And there wasn't a lot of space for those people upstairs. But a lot of them were charting the markets the entire time. They had their places where they were going to market entries and exits. And so when they got that $50,000 or $60,000 redundancy check, that was enough to put into account and see if they could put. And a lot of them were successful because they never relied on real estate in the pit or a buddy that was a big broker. They had to make the call on their own and do their own research. So I saw a lot of that. I really recognize success when it came to your own processes, your own decisions, and you didn't rely on anybody else. The people that relied on a lot of other people, and when that market finally went, they were the ones out there trying to struggle, selling insurance, trying to sell real estate, trying to sell, retirement packages. Those were the guys that really struggled. So I definitely did have enough foresight to watch the people that didn't benefit from real estate in those trading pits and having to make it on their own with their own processes and operations. I was able to see that those were the people you wanted to emulate. You didn't want to emulate the guys that stood on the top step and ate every order.
We've both seen some tragedies in that transition, awful ones. Anymore, I'm like, I just kind of shut my phone off to the funerals and some of the stories that came. But I'm sure you knew a few too. And it sounds like the expectations and the preparedness of switching, basically having to switch in the middle of your life to something else, whatever it would be. What about those that didn't make it? What was their expectations? What was their perhaps lack of preparedness?
I think sometimes when it gets to be that serious, hey, my industry is going away. A lot of people froze. They just kept on going down to the board of trade or going down to the Merc every day. They froze. They didn't make any plans for what happens if this all goes away or what happens if, how do I, and a lot of them had, 10, 20-year marriages where their family, rightfully so, had expected a certain amount of comfort and a level of income. And so they just froze and they didn't know what to do. And I think a lot of people did that because where do you go? Where do you go if there's nothing? I suppose it's similar to a guy on a shop floor that gets made redundant in some factory where his skill you can't really take anywhere else because he knows how to do this one thing for this one product that they're not making anymore. I mean, that was kind of what happened here. And so these guys, they were doing very well. They're at the top of their careers, and all of a sudden their career is gone. I mentioned it to other people. What do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a chief operating officer. Well, what happens if you lost your job? What would you do? Well, I'd go be a chief operating officer at another firm. I go, no, what if there was no such thing as chief operating officer? what would you do? And when you put it to them like that, they think, wow, it's a pretty daunting subject. So, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Jim, we've both seen our fair share of suicides. Those really ramped up over the pandemic. I saw a total of 6 suicides, and it was from market guys. Well, 4 market guys, 2 people where they weren't in the market, but they just didn't have they didn't know where to turn, they didn't have the ability to make the money they were making, and they just didn't see a way out, and I understand it, I can see that absolutely what they were thinking about, so it took a toll on families because when that happens, it just ruins everything. I had a good friend of mine when I was a senior year in high school, he committed suicide, and I said to myself, I don't wanna ever do that to anybody else because the pain that was left behind from that, and you can see it from all these guys in our business that did it, because they just didn't know how to come home and tell the family that I don't have a job. I haven't had a job for 7 months. We're out of money, and I don't know what to do. It's a really hard talk to have with your family. So and you know what? That's still going on. There's still people trying to crawl and to put together some sort of career there. But it makes it harder and harder the further and further we get away from open outcry and all the skills and the people that you knew. And you're right. I'm in groups, a London International Financial Futures Exchange face group, a CME Facebook group, and a Chicago Board of Trade Facebook group. And you know what? More often than not, you're right. You got to shut it off because there's not a ton of great news going around. Some people naturally getting older and passing away, but a lot of people still out there looking for work and falling on hard times. And it was the best of times and the worst of times. Who said that, right? I'm so blessed that I got to go in and follow my father into the career that he chose for himself. But at the same time, I happen to be there and oversee the death of that industry, which makes it particularly difficult. So, and it's still not quite dead, and it's nowhere near what it was before. You know, Jim, remember when you got out of school and you could go down to the floor of the Board of Trade and you could see a guy from Harvard, a guy that doesn't have a college degree, a kid that failed out of high school, all standing next to each other, making the same amount of money or pretty close because it was dog eat dog. It was the best man win. It was all merit based, no favors, and the true cream rose to the top. And you didn't have to have a degree from Harvard or a degree from Gavitt High School did not give you any surety of making any money down there. It came with your ability. So that's what I loved about the job too, right? I mean, because you weren't going to be stuck in a cubicle working, your balls off for 10 years, and then the job that you've been vying for goes to some other jamoke that wasn't there for 2 years, right? I mean, that also to me is really stressful. I find that much more stressful than the markets because you sit there all your entire life on the floor of the bank wanting to move up to the next spot and somebody else gets it. And now what? I mean, that's got to be pretty daunting too. So I guess everybody's got their own stresses, but the people that had a great income and they weren't prepared for the changes that came down the pipe when it came to our industry, I saw them freeze right in front of my eyes, and it was like they were in denial. They didn't want to go for it. And, everybody kept on hearing about the new new exchange that was going to open up, open outcry. We still have a couple of pits left. I think, Eurodollar options and the OEX over at the CBOE, they're all open outcry still, but you know what? They're not like it used to be. All the traders in there are corporate traders. They get base salaries and a bonus at the end of the year. It's not a bunch of people down there taking risk with their own money and being rewarded themselves. It's totally changed. So even the payout schedule is nowhere near what it used to be. So even if you have the opportunity, it wouldn't have been as much fun. But it's like I said, it's been one heck of a ride, and it gets you recognized a lot of places too. So a lot of fun. I have a guy that's an old New York Stock Exchange trader on my show, and I interviewed him yesterday. He's on once a week, and I just reminded him on air that there's not too many of us out there. Like he was able to transition into media. He's on Fox Business almost every day, and I was one of them that transitioned to media. And all the other people we know, between the two of us, nobody made it. There's nobody that's made it.
I know it's almost a tough topic at times. I mean, I lived through it in the early 80s when the steel mill around here went from 30,000 to 3,000. And I saw 50-year-old men just, drink themselves to death and, just kind of give up at times. And then I saw the same thing at the Board of Trade, a generation and a half later, and it was very similar. But you have something going on now that might kind of be similar once again. And at the beginning of AI is getting kind of rid of a lot of skills, like niche jobs, like perhaps accounting, perhaps software design, perhaps some architectural design, that kind of thing. And you're seeing some real high numbers on white collar jobs, just not people not being able to fill, applying to 100 jobs and not getting one callback. What can you say to them?
That's a great question. So, you're exactly right. White collar jobs are the ones at risk. Blue collar ones are not right now, at least, because blue collar people actually put stuff together. They hang a door, they bang a drum, they swing a hammer, whatever. Hope I'm wrong on this. And I have people that tell me I'm wrong, but I don't believe it yet. But I believe that AI is going to decimate the workforce. And, I don't take that lightly because I know what it feels like. I've been replaced, but the technology chucked me out of my job. But I think that artificial intelligence was made to take the place of a human. It's not like the Industrial Revolution where everybody says, "Oh, we're just replacing people with old skills with new people with new skills." I don't think that's the case. We're already seeing the numbers when it comes to entry level accounting practices. All of that can be done by AI because it's just gathering information. The same with investment banking, where I came up. All of those investment banking jobs are not hiring anymore. I don't know how anybody gets on the ladder. And so what would you tell to those people? Well, number one, there's two different people there. There's people that aren't going to be able to get on the ladder. And number two, there's people that are already in those white collar jobs that should be really looking over their shoulder. And they should be planning on what they're going to be doing once either they can harness AI and embrace it and have it be part of their job, or they can ignore it and have it be the reason why they lost their job. But to the younger person, I would say this, and I've never been more serious about it. I spoke about this probably 4 years ago at Portage High School about that you're gonna have to start thinking about maybe not going to college and go to the trade school, because trade schools are not going to be replaced initially by AI. Even Jensen Huang, who's the CEO of NVIDIA, which was one of the biggest high-flying tech stocks last year, it's already, it's a good one this year too. But he says that he thinks all the millionaires are going to be coming from electricians and plumbers, HVAC guys. And I couldn't agree with him more in the short term. I don't know how that goes in the long term, but you could be really ridiculous and say, the Federal Reserve is just 400 economists gathering information and coming up with a decision. Why shouldn't they be worried? I would love to have AI take over the Fed because sometimes they make boneheaded decisions. So I hope I'm wrong, because smart people, maybe smarter than I, have said, no, there's going to be a cottage industry. There's going to be new things that come up. We always worry about this. It's happened before. We've replaced technology, people, technology. I don't think it's happened before like this, Jim. I really believe that AI was built to take the place of a human. Because number one, we've got a shortage of workers in some areas that people just don't want to do the work, but number two is, look what's already happening, and we haven't really even gotten to it's only just starting. So everybody's looking at AI as a way to cut costs, save money. And why wouldn't you use AI instead of hiring somebody? AI, you don't have to pay sick days, vacation days. You don't have to worry about anything like that. These robots or machines are all, I just think that that's going to be something that everybody has to deal with unless you want to do something in the trades. So the older people, make AI part of your life. Know how to use it better than anybody else. That's my only thing I can say. And number two is, if you go into the trades, be an electrician, a plumber, somebody in heating, cooling, whatever, because those are the people that are going to be minting the money. Now, the overarching thing over that, as I always say this to people all the time too, is, two things. Do not go to work. Do not go to work for the government. And what I mean by that is this: you don't want to be paid out of other people's taxes. You don't want other people's taxes to be how you get paid, because if you want to make more money, you got to raise taxes. So the prospects of you making a lot of money working for the government, unless you're a congressman and you are suddenly making 30 million in 1 year, that's a different deal, because, well, I don't know where that money comes from. But if you're working for your local municipality, it's hard to make a lot of money if you're getting paid out of taxes. That's number one thing. Maybe you have a vocation and you want to take care of people. So go ahead, be a cop, fireman, EMT. Those people are all, remember, they get paid for out of taxes. It's hard. Vocations are great, but just know what you're in for. And number two is you can't ever take a job by the hour because there's only 24 in a day. So don't get paid by the hour, whatever you do, because God limits your income. It's 24 hours. What are you going to do now? At some point in time, you can't make more money per hour and you're stuck. You need to be in a business where you're part of a deal, where you get, a bigger picture. You put something together, you buy real estate, you do something, but you can't be getting paid by the hour because that's automatic limitation. So the worst thing you can do is take a government job and get paid by the hour, because then you got a double whammy. But that's what I tell people. So I think that you're going to be okay if you're an electrician, a plumber, and those types of guys. But you have to be able to, if you're already in business, embrace AI, make it part of you, learn it better than everybody else. So you're the one that's using it to your, to your advantage and not having it take you over.
He's Scott Shellady. I'm Jim Deedlow, a couple of burnt out traders, reemerging in our own way. And we would like to say thank you to Adriana Alvarez, who is our producer and cut all this up and runs the podcast network. You can get it. Just type in Cow Guy anywhere you go for your podcast, and you'll be able to find it. Scott, thanks a lot.
Brother, thank you.